Well, I think if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be insurance commissioner, I would have said, I don't know what that is, and probably not.
In this episode, we will examine the North Dakota Insurance Department and its role in state government. To help provide that information, I am happy to be visiting with Mr. John Godfread, the elected insurance commissioner for North Dakota. Mr. Godfread has served as the insurance commissioner since his election in 2016. Welcome, Mr. Godfread, and thank you for taking time today to visit about the insurance department.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a fun project, and it's always good to talk about the insurance department.
Yeah. So, if you want to just give just a short bio or
Sure.
background of yourself.
Well, I think if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be insurance commissioner, I would have said, I don't know what that is, and probably not. But I was previously involved with the Legislative Assembly through their legal internship. So in North Dakota, we have a very unique program where the law students from the University of North Dakota get to serve as basically research analysts for legislative committees. It sounded like a great idea for me to get out of the second year of my law studies and come to Bismarck and make a little bit of money and sit in a legislative session. Prior to that, I was in banking and finance. Went to law school to probably go back into banking and finance. Got exposed to the legislative process. Got exposed to the policy development process in our state. And from there, I went and worked at the tax department for a little while as one of their attorneys. Then went to the Greater North Dakota Chamber of Commerce, or State Chamber of Commerce. And my predecessor announced he wasn't going to be running for re-election back in 2016. And talking with my family, this has been a really good fit. It's complex. There's math. There's finance involved, and so it seemed to check a lot of boxes for me. And we in North Dakota generally don't elect our insurance commissioner from the insurance industry. I think it's a little bit of a foxcar in the henhouse mentality. You don't want to come with too many bad habits. And so threw my name into the ring, and here we are, 8 years later, or 2 terms later, and running for my third. So it's been a really, really good fit for me, and I've really enjoyed the work I get to do.
All right, great. So, what are the main responsibilities and duties of the insurance commissioner in North Dakota?
So our primary role is consumer protection. So we serve as that consumer protection arm for North Dakota citizens when they have issues with either their insurance agent or their insurance company. So you think that mostly forward-facing on if I've got a claim settlement, if a hailstorm came through and damaged my home, and my insurance company isn't paying what I think they should pay me, or an auto accident, or health care, all those different things, or health insurance. You can reach out to the insurance department. We can investigate that claim on your behalf and essentially negotiate with the insurance company to make sure that they're following the laws of their contract and the words of their contract that they have with you. And so we're kind of that independent arbiter. And I like to say, when the consumer picks up their phone and is upset about an insurance issue, they're at a pretty strong disadvantage because you're dealing with an insurance company who deals with this stuff on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when you need insurance, it's the last thing that you probably think you're going to need, and you don't really need it until you got a loved one with a health issue, an auto accident, or a storm or something like that with a home issue. The first thing you're going to be thinking about isn't your insurance, it's how do I get my life back together? And so we can really step in the shoes of that consumer and say, okay, we're going to talk to your insurance company, make sure you're being treated fairly, making sure they're complying with the contract, and getting the settlement that you deserve. And so it's an opportunity for us to take some of that burden off of consumers when they have those issues, and then also ensure that they're being treated fairly. And so it's a really rewarding job, I think, for our staff and for the folks here to do that, because it's, again, stepping into somebody usually at one of the worst days of their lives and help them navigate a settlement process.
And speaking of staff, how many people work in the insurance department?
So right now we've got 47 staff in the insurance department. We just recently added the state fire marshal into us as well. So we're about 38 insurance professionals, and the rest are kind of our state fire marshal team. So they've been with us for about a year now. And that there's some unique synergies there between fire and insurance. The first insurance policy sold in the world was a fire policy. Prior to that, you could pay a fee to a firehouse essentially, and they may or may not come and put the fire out if your house is on fire. Well, the problem that led to that is, well, if I didn't pay the right firehouse, you'd have fire people showing up and be like, well, you haven't paid me my fee yet, so we're going to get your home burned down until it do. That created the insurance system. So there's insurance and fire go way, way back, and up until 1960s, the fire marshal was underneath the insurance department, went to the attorney general for a while, and now it's back with us, which, again, that risk mitigation and how do we protect communities, how do we prevent losses, is all something we share in. And so it's really nice to have that fire marshal back to be able to kind of take advantage of some of those synergies.
Right. Relating to the insurance industry,
Sure.
What are some of the key functions as far as regulating the industry within the state?
Sure. So some of the more of the back end side of it is, we've got a number of different divisions in the department. So company licensing and examination. So that's a division where we go in and actually look at the insurance company's books to make sure that they have the money available to pay claims as they come in. So that's a pretty heavy financial technical audit that we do. We complete those across all of our insurance companies that are domesticated here in North Dakota. So we've got 33 domestic insurance companies in North Dakota. We obviously have the big players like State Farm and Allstate, all the big ones that everybody knows about. We join those audits with other states. So like State Farm is domiciled in Illinois. Well, North Dakota will join in on that because we've got consumers that are impacted by State Farm. So our primary focus on that side is, again, making sure that the money that they collect, they have enough money to pay the claims when they come through. We've also got a fraud unit, which looks at different insurance fraud issues across our state. We're seeing a big uptick in health insurance fraud and healthcare fraud. But again, it's also the prime example we get, and it's the one that I bang my head against the wall on is, we've got a lot of people who get into a car wreck and then will purchase insurance after the auto accident and try to claim that, I had insurance the whole time. With today's technology, all that stuff is very easy to find out, and we've got a lot of people who end up paying some fines or getting criminal records because of some poor decisions they're making. And so again, it's always, honesty is always the best policy. We always encourage you to have that insurance early. We've got a producer licensing division, so that all the licensed agents in North Dakota have to go through a process. They got to do a background check, pass a couple tests, and then they get their license from North Dakota. So that division kind of looks at all those, all of our licensees across the state. And then we've got property and casualty division, which manages the property and casualty work, life and health. So it's life insurance and health insurance, and they monitor those. We've got a legal division that helps across the entire department, and then obviously some admin and other things like that. So forward facing, it's that consumer protection where consumer assistance, we can offer that to the consumers as they call in. On the back end of the actual industry regulation, it's really monitoring the financial situation of all our insurance companies that operate in the state and making sure that they have the financial backing to uphold the promises they're making to our consumers.
So is it almost like auditing them to some degree?
Yeah, I would like to say it's auditing on steroids. Our audits are very different than, say, the auditor's office audits. Again, it's very forward focused, and so we've got to be able to analyze what risks are coming in, what claims are coming in, how do you cycle through that? Are you looking 5-10 years down the road? What do you see for risks? How do you analyze that? What are your investments doing? And it's also a little bit different in terms of, oftentimes in the insurance space, the tails are a lot longer. So it's very different from a banking style audit where, God forbid, there's a financial crisis, there's a run on a bank. Mm-hmm. In insurance, there's no really run on insurance because there's an underlying claim that has to happen. So we've got some unique auditing standards that we can apply to, but they're, again, applied broadly across our country and I'd argue across the world on how to monitor that financial health. And I'd make the argument that the insurance industry has done a very, very good job of weathering a number of financial crises. You think of the 2008 most recent one. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the insurance industry that collapsed into that space. It was, AIG is one of the main ones people think about, but it was their banking side that was actually caused the problem, not the insurance side. And so insurance is inherently a state-regulated system. So of the 56 jurisdictions across our country, including the territories, everyone has a state insurance commissioner or insurance commissioner that oversees that. We work together through the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, which is kind of our governing, it's not a governing body, but it's a collaborative body that we all come together and talk on. But we've got 150 years of, I would argue, a pretty strong track record of regulating the insurance industry in our country. And, again, from World War II to the COVID pandemic to the 2008 financial crisis, our insurance industry has really been able to weather that storm. And I think a lot of that is due because we're able to be flexible across the country and how we monitor that and how we expect that our risks inherently are different in North Dakota than they are in Florida or California, and being able to adjust to that is really, really important for a healthy industry.
Sure. And how does your office encourage that transparency from those companies to the consumer to instill that confidence?
Well, and I think that's insurance by its nature is, I'd argue, overly complex. I think we're getting better as an industry, and making sure that our consumers understand the policies that they're purchasing, what they're purchasing, and why it's important. I think we're seeing now with the explosion of technology, our consumers have a better grasp, or have the ability to have a better grasp of what their financial situation is, what their risks are, what they want covered, what their insurance policies should say. And so we're in an element of transition in that space in this industry where we've got to be able to use simple language to help instill that trust to our consumers. So I'd say we're getting better. We're not quite there yet. It's still, the insurance contract is still a multi-page document. I would argue I don't know too many people who are reading their insurance policies when they get them. They're just kind of hoping that it's there when they need it, and that's, again, relying on a good agent to help you explain all those things. But I think we're going to see a time in the next decade or so where the expectations of readability, understandability, and all these insurance products are going to be critical to do exactly what you said, instill that trust that people know what they're buying and that it's going to be there when they need it.
Sure. And so what kind of education outreach is your office trying to do to help North Dakotans understand some of that?
So we're very active on our social medias. We're very active on our websites. We've got buying guides and shopping guides, and certainly answer all those questions. I and just about every interview I can possibly think of is there are no dumb questions when it comes to insurance. So whether it's questions on the front end of what policies do I need, what should I be looking at, who should I be talking to, our office can certainly help you with that. And then even into the nitty-gritty details of reviewing policies, we can do that as well. But trying to arm consumers with the questions that they need to have, with the information they need to have, is one of our key areas of focus. Now, I think you can argue government generally struggles at telling its own story and getting out in front of consumers and saying, hey, we're a trusted resource for you to come rely on, an independent resource. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to do what we can within the budget we got that is set by our legislature. But it's certainly an area of focus. We've spent a lot of time with our director of communications, again, trying to, how do we get in front of more people? How do we make sure people know we exist? And kind of being that constant drip, either whether in social media or in the media itself, because the reality is I may not be thinking about insurance today because I didn't have an issue. I didn't have a car accident. I didn't have anything like that. We got to be continually dripping there because at some point you're going to need it. And we got to make sure we're able to be in front of the people who need it when they need it.
Yeah. So how does the legislature influence the work that your office does?
Again, we're a state-based system, so the laws that our legislature passed really do govern our system. We're very different from a lot of other agencies in that respect. Like I think Securities is a somewhat related agency. They're governed by the SEC, which is governed by the federal government, and so there's some significant federal oversight there. Mm-hmm. We're pretty limited in our federal oversight, and so the laws that are passed at the legislative level truly do govern our insurance industry. Now, there's been a great deal of effort to put into uniformity, so companies can operate across state lines, and their expectations are fairly similar. But at the same time, we're able to try different things in our different market that maybe work better for North Dakota than, say, for Florida or another state. And so they absolutely have an influence on what we do, not only on the policy side, but also on our budgetary side. They control the purse string. So when it comes down to the resources, the employees, all the different things we want to do, they're kind of that overseer, as they should be, as mm-hmm. That's where our system's set up. So I would argue, for the insurance department anyway, they have a very, very significant role in setting the policy direction of our state.
So you'll probably work fairly close with them when they are in session, at least, especially?
When they're in session, when they're not in session, when we're, at all times. I mean, we're pretty active during the interim, doing studies and responding to questions from the legislature. It's difficult, again, because it is a very complicated and complex realm of the world. And so, especially with term limits and the turnover in the legislative branch, we're seeing the need to do more insurance kind of 101s, kind of here's the history of the insurance department, here's where we're at as a system for the United States, and here's some things to be aware of. We certainly will answer any questions they got, obviously, as they bring them forward, and be able to explain how, there's a reason maybe why we're different than Minnesota. That a fun example is in Minnesota you get a free windshield. So if you got an auto policy, you get a rock chip, you can go get a windshield replaced, and it's no cost to you. Why don't we do that in North Dakota? Well, because it's going to be about an additional $400 a year per consumer So your rates are going to go up. Your rates are going to be a little bit higher than they would be in Minnesota. But yeah, you get that free windshield. Is that worth it?
Sure.
And that's a policy decision that the legislature hasn't quite bought into yet, which is we're fine with. That's their prerogative. But there is a lot of anecdotes out there about the windshield. Why can't we get a free windshield like Minnesota does? Like, well, if you look at it, their rates are higher than ours, and that's part of why. And so having that explanation, be able to walk our legislator through some of those policy implications is a key role that we have in this office. But yeah, we're in touch with our legislators weekly, I'd say.
Sure. Because North Dakota is such a rural state, does your office play a role in addressing some of the coverages in rural and, say, underserved areas of North Dakota?
Yeah, I think we're seeing that more and more. We're kind of for the longest time, at least under my experience, our property market has been pretty almost sleepy, right? We have wind, we have hail. Yeah, we've done a pretty good job as a state of mitigating against flooding. And so there really wasn't too much to write home about or too many issues in the property side of the world. With the wildfires out west, the hurricanes out east, the other global catastrophes we've seen, and the fact that, a big storm that blows through the United States now is $1 billion storm. And so we're seeing a significant amount of rate pressure on our property market because it's all a big risk pool, right? We're all shared in the pool together. And so right now, on average, our property insurance companies in our country are, for every dollar they get in premium, they're spending $1.12 in claims. That's a really tough business model to maintain, and so we're going to see rates increase to cover those claims. And we're not immune from that in North Dakota. So we're seeing some of that tightening of the market, especially rurally, where they may not understand that market, they may not understand the risks in our state. And so one of our key initiatives this upcoming year is going to be to talk about the North Dakota insurance market. We're a really safe place for insurers to park capital. Mm-hmm. Again, we're thankfully, knock on wood, we don't suffer the wildfire losses that California, Colorado do. We've never had a hurricane as long as I can remember in North Dakota. So we've got some unique attributes that really insulate us from risk, and we know how to build against hail. We know how to build against wind. And so as long as we can go out and market those attributes, that should be a positive for our marketplace. Our population size is a little bit a challenge at times, but again, I think just telling the story in North Dakota is a key issue that we're going to be trying to get out in front of insurers to have that discussion. But we play a role in the availability of insurance across our state and trying to incentivize more players in the marketplace as other players kind of tighten up their restrictions.
Sure. And how do you get feedback from North Dakotans in any of those areas?
Phone call, email. I mean, letters. I get it all. It's they're usually not calling me to tell me we're doing a great job, which we expect. Nobody calls the insurance commissioner to say, "Boy, this insurance worked really, really well. I got more than I expected. Isn't this great?" But so we get it through that way. We also, again, through the media and through discussions there. I mean, oftentimes you'll have consumers who will reach out to news agency and say, "Boy, my insurance is up 30%. What's going on?" Then we'll do a series of interviews with the reporters and things like that. But I think we try to be as accessible as we possibly can be. Again, I would argue we're one of the best kept secrets in North Dakota, which is frustrating to me at times, certainly, because we're a state agency serving our citizens, and we've got to do a better job of making our citizens aware of the services that are available to them, because it's ultimately it's no cost to them on when they call us. They pay through premium taxes and other pieces that fund our agency. But if they're not made aware of our services, it's really, really hard to utilize what we can offer.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that people have talked about, obviously, for a number of years, health insurance, prescription drugs, and so forth. Does the office get involved in any of that to any degree?
So we do. Health insurance is a little bit different. So with the passage of the ACA back in 2010, the federal government really did kind of assume a lot of control over the health marketplace. Now, we still have, obviously, a significant role to play in the insurance department. But a lot of those rules and regulations are set federally now. But we're still that touch point for consumers. So if you have an issue with Blue Cross Blue Shield, Sanford, Medica, United Healthcare, all the ones who operate in the state, we're the complaint receivers. So we're the ones who then will discuss and talk with one of the carriers and say, "Hey, we've got John Smith on the phone. his services aren't being covered, give us an explanation as to why and what can we do, and we believe it fits underneath this federal rule, this federal law, and trying to get resolution that way. So that aspect of it, and then also certainly at the legislative level when it comes to health policy and what direction we're sending as a state. A big area that we've been spending a lot of time on is the cost of healthcare. We are, unfortunately, a very high cost healthcare state, which inherently will then lead to a higher health insurance cost state. And it's fairly fundamental. If I drive a 1976 Chevy truck versus a 2014 or 2024 Jeep Grand Wagoneer, that insurance premium is going to be very different. So if the underlying thing that I'm insuring is increasing in cost, my insurance rates are going to go up. So we've really had some discussion with our hospital providers, with our legislators on the trajectory that we're on as a state. We're number 1, 2, or 3 in a lot of the areas in healthcare costs that we don't want to be 1, 2, or 3 in. And so how do we influence and have that discussion about, we need to lower the overall cost of healthcare to effectively lower the health insurance rate so more people can have access to that. I wouldn't say we've made a ton of headway there, but it's certainly something that we've spent a lot of time on and talking about, again, the healthcare costs in North Dakota and how that actually impacts consumers, not just in their initial pocketbook from the bill, but also their underlying premium of the health insurance that they're paying.
Sure. Last couple questions.
Sure.
Everybody has to go see that insurance agent. Does this office see that those agents are trained, licensed, continuing education, anything along those lines?
So there is continuing education requirements for every agent. Every 2 years they've got to do, it's like 40 hours of continuing education. And I will say, for the most part, the agents in North Dakota do a fantastic job. We've got a really good group of agents who really do, I think, put their consumers first and their clients first, and really do try to make sure that they're, we always encourage folks not to shop on price alone. You want to shop on coverage. And our agents do a very good job of helping that through. A fun anecdote I've got is my dad had to switch insurance coverages recently, and he called me and said, "John, give me the best agent you got." Well, I can't give out agents, but I'm going to tell you, you're not going to shop on price alone. Well, it better be the same price as I was paying before. It's like shopping on coverage. So our agents do a great job of that. And we oversee them, but again, for the most part, we don't have a lot of issues with our agents, and we always encourage folks to use an agent. It's super easy to shop online. It's super easy to go online and type in you name the insurance company and get an online quote. The unfortunate thing is, at that point, you may be getting the mandatory minimums or not the coverage you're expecting, and especially on the auto side of the world right now, if you get into a fender bender, it's going to be you're going to be tens of thousands of dollars before you know it. And I think we see a lot of that on the back end where it's, well, I bought this really cheap coverage and now they're not covering anything. It's like, yeah, you get what you pay for. And so we always encourage to shop with an agent, somebody who can walk you through the policies to make sure you do have the coverage that you need and you're covering the risks that you are exposed to.
Got it. All right, last question, that everybody gets the same one. So what's the impact to North Dakotans if the department ceased to exist, if there's no more insurance?
It's a good question, because on my first election, I ran against an opponent who was running on the grounds of shutting down the office. We don't need it. I'd argue the market. I'm a free market guy. I believe in the free market. I believe in all that. But again, when it comes to insurance, it's a really big risk to take. If you say, "Hey, I bought insurance from XYZ company, and yeah, my house burned down, and they didn't pay me any money." Well, there's nobody to go to collect that money from. There's nobody to say, "Hey, let's file a complaint with the office doesn't exist." Yeah, you may be able to go and tell your friends, "Don't ever buy from XYZ company because they didn't pay my claim," but you're still out $300,000 on your home, and there's nobody there kind of overseeing that industry. And I think, given the complexity of insurance and given the fundamental purpose that it provides to our economy, again, I can't drive a car without insurance. I can't own a home without insurance. I can't start a business without insurance. I'm not going to be able to provide that financial safety net to my family without insurance. Really, when you look at it, I like to say we allow the risk takers to go out and take risks and then really drive that economy. And so effectively what we do in the department is, one, make sure that those promises that our consumers are accepting or the companies are giving to our consumers are being upheld. And without that, I think a lot of people would be getting scammed. And so again, we're providing that kind of that safety net, that backstop, to make sure that when you go to an insurance agent or when you go to file a claim, that you're going to reasonably expect that that claim will be covered if it's a covered loss underneath your contract and all those things. So I like to think, and I may be a little grandiose, I'm a little biased. I love insurance. I think it's a fascinating industry, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. But I do believe that it's the underlying piece of our economy of allowing, again, new businesses to start up, our economy to grow forward, and providing that financial safety net to families who unfortunately do suffer loss.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking time to help listeners understand the role of the North Dakota Insurance Department and that it plays in state government and the work that you and your staff do. Thank you very much.
Happy anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for spending some time with the 701 Civics podcast. Be sure to give a thumbs up for today's podcast and subscribe to catch the latest episode of the 701 Civics podcast as we continue together to learn about North Dakota state government.